Have you ever wondered, why are nations overflowing with oil, gas, and minerals often the poorest on Earth, while nations with no resources at all become rich and powerful? If hard work and discipline alone make a country wealthy, then why did Japan and Germany only rise after World War II, and not before, when their people were already hardworking? If corruption is the reason countries remain poor, then why is America, with trillions unaccounted for in the Pentagon, lobbyists buying policies in Congress, and scandals in every department, still the richest empire in the world? Why do we see some nations allowed to flourish, while others are trapped in endless debt, crisis, or war? Welcome to the series about the empire without soldiers. When people think of empires, they often picture armies, borders, and conquest. History books are filled with images of marching soldiers, falling capitals, and maps redrawn in blood. But the most powerful empire of the modern world does not look like that. It has no army, no flag, no national anthem. Yet its influence reaches into every country, every government, and nearly every household on Earth. It rules quietly through money. After the Second World War, much of the world lay in ruins. Europe was devastated. Asia was shattered. Entire economies had collapsed. Out of this destruction, a new global system was created, one intended to prevent future wars and stabilize the world economy. In 1944, representatives from 44 countries gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. There, a decision was made that would shape the next century. The US dollar was placed at the center of the global financial system. International institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank were established to manage stability, reconstruction, and development. On the surface, this system promised cooperation, growth, and shared prosperity, but beneath it was something far more powerful. For the first time in history, global influence no longer depended primarily on military conquest, but on access. Access to dollars, access to credit, access to global trade. Money itself became a mechanism of control. From this moment onward, the world began to divide, not formally, but structurally. Some nations were integrated into the core of the system. They were granted favorable access to capital, markets, and reconstruction. They are the inner circle, the chosen nations allowed to prosper inside the banker's cage. The United States and its closest allies, Western Europe, later Japan, Germany, and South Korea. Their industries were rebuilt, their exports flourished, living standards rose dramatically, but this prosperity came with conditions. Economic policy had limits, political alignment mattered, sovereignty was constrained, success was permitted, but only within the boundaries of the system. Beyond this inner circle lay the periphery. Countries denied the same access. Nations labeled unstable, unreliable, or threatening. Some sanctioned outright. Others trapped in cycles of debt, dependency, and repeated crises. In parts of Latin America, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, development stalled. Natural wealth flowed outward. Debt accumulated inward. Over time, a pattern emerged. Growth was rewarded. Independence was discouraged. Disobedience carried consequences. The genius of this empire is that it does not rule openly. It doesn't need to. It has its tools. Money creation, deciding who receives new credit and on what terms. Debt, offered as assistance, but tied to conditions that reshape entire economies. Financial crises. Moments of collapse followed by reforms imposed from outside. Political pressure, exercised through markets, ratings, sanctions, and capital flight. Narrative control, where failure in the global south is blamed on corruption, while failures in the global north are described as policy errors. This was not chaos. It was architecture, a system so deeply embedded that most people stopped questioning it. In the episodes ahead, we will examine how this system actually works. How some nations were rebuilt, but bound. How others were disciplined after moments of defiance. How financial rules quietly replaced colonial rule. And how prosperity, in the modern world, often depends less on productivity or resources, and more on permission. Because in this system, success is rarely free. It is conditional, And the question that remains is simple. If a nation's future depends not on its people, its resources, or its leaders, but on access controlled beyond its borders, then who truly governs the world?